At the end of 2021, we've paved the road to 2022's G20 presidency, promoting Recover Together, Recover Stronger as its main theme. The first Finance and Central Bank Deputies meeting in the Indonesian presidency has established 6 priority agendas in the finance track that will be discussed throughout 2022. Now, it's time to get the wheels turning. One of the most crucial agenda in the Indonesian presidency is exit strategy to support recovery. COVID-19 has led to a severe global recession. In response, countries have taken unprecedented fiscal and monetary policies to protect the economy. These policies, along with the distribution of COVID-19 vaccines, has brought positive outcomes. Economic activities had begun to resume. Nevertheless, recovery doesn't come as a one-size-fits-all item. Advanced economies are recovering much faster than their emerging markets counterpart, while low-income countries are lagging. The different timings of exit policies can potentially bring negative spillover effect for countries. To mitigate these risks, a well-planned, well-calibrated, and well-communicated exit strategy is needed. Under Indonesia's presidency, the G20 countries and invitees will work together to create policy settings for a smooth exit strategy. Discussions will be held in the working group level as well as high-level meetings. For it is our duty to ensure that emerging from this pandemic, no one gets left behind. Recover together, recover stronger.
Dunia tengah berjuang menghadapi musuh tak kasat mata yang menyentuh seluruh aspek kehidupan. Namun di tengah tantangan, selalu ada secercah harapan. Aktivitas terus berjalan, memutar roda perekonomian. Dalam keadaan ini, seluruh dunia perlu bergerak bersama, mencapai pemulihan bersama.
Bersatu, bersinergi, bergotong royong, membangun optimisme, pemulihan ekonomi.
Indonesia akan memegang presidensi atau tuan rumah KTT G20 pada tahun 2022.
Forum G20 terdiri atas negara-negara terbesar di dunia. Bersama, G20 membentuk 60% populasi bumi, 75% perdagangan global, dan 80% PDB dunia. G20 membahas isu-isu ekonomi seperti pemulihan ekonomi global, sektor keuangan, ekonomi dan keuangan inklusif, serta ekonomi digital, dan isu lainnya seperti lingkungan hidup, kesehatan, ketenaga kerjaan. Setiap tahun, presidensi G20 dipegang oleh salah satu negara anggota yang memiliki andil dalam menentukan topik pembahasan forum. Dan pada 2022, presidensi G20 dijabat oleh Indonesia. Dengan keadaan dunia yang masih terdampak pandemi, presidensi G20 memberi kekuatan Indonesia untuk menjadi bagian penting dari pemulihan dunia, sekaligus mendorong pemulihan dalam negeri. Kelancaran presidensi memerlukan peran kita semua, mulai penyusunan materi, penyiapan sarana prasarana, komunikasi, hingga berbagai aspek lainnya. Dukung kesuksesan presidensi G20 2022 jadi bagian dari momentum penting perekonomian global. Indonesia saatnya pimpin pemulihan dunia.
At the end of 2021, we've paved the road to 2022's G20 presidency, promoting Recover Together, Recover Stronger as its main theme. The first Finance and Central Bank Deputies meeting in the Indonesian presidency has established 6 priority agendas in the finance track that will be discussed throughout 2022. Now, it's time to get the wheels turning. One of the most crucial agenda in the Indonesian presidency is exit strategy to support recovery. COVID-19 has led to a severe global recession. In response, countries have taken unprecedented fiscal and monetary policies to protect the economy. These policies, along with the distribution of COVID-19 vaccines, has brought positive outcomes. Economic activities had begun to resume. Nevertheless, recovery doesn't come as a one-size-fits-all item. Advanced economies are recovering much faster than their emerging markets counterpart, while low-income countries are lagging. The different timings of exit policies can potentially bring negative spillover effect for countries. To mitigate these risks, a well-planned, well-calibrated, and well-communicated exit strategy is needed. Under Indonesia's presidency, the G20 countries and invitees will work together to create policy settings for a smooth exit strategy. Discussions will be held in the working group level as well as high-level meetings. For it is our duty to ensure that emerging from this pandemic, no one gets left behind. Recover together, recover stronger.
Dunia tengah berjuang menghadapi musuh tak kasat mata yang menyentuh seluruh aspek kehidupan. Namun di tengah tantangan selalu ada secercah harapan. Aktivitas terus berjalan, memutar roda perekonomian. Dalam keadaan ini, seluruh dunia perlu bergerak bersama, mencapai pemulihan bersama.
Bersatu, bersinergi, bergotong royong, membangun optimisme, pemulihan ekonomi.
Indonesia akan memegang presidensi atau tuan rumah KTT G20 pada tahun 2022.
Forum G20 terdiri atas negara-negara terbesar di dunia. Bersama, G20 membentuk 60% populasi bumi, 75% perdagangan global, dan 80% PDB dunia. G20 membahas isu-isu ekonomi seperti pemulihan ekonomi global, sektor keuangan, ekonomi dan keuangan inklusif, serta ekonomi digital, dan isu lainnya seperti lingkungan hidup, kesehatan, ketenaga kerjaan. Setiap tahun, presidensi G20 dipegang oleh salah satu negara anggota yang memiliki andil dalam menentukan topik pembahasan forum. Dan pada 2022, presidensi G20 dijabat oleh Indonesia. Dengan keadaan dunia yang masih terdampak pandemi, presidensi G20 memberi kekuatan Indonesia untuk menjadi bagian penting dari pemulihan dunia sekaligus mendorong pemulihan dalam negeri. Kelancaran presidensi memerlukan peran kita semua, mulai penyusunan materi, penyiapan sarana prasarana, komunikasi, hingga berbagai aspek lainnya. Dukung kesuksesan presidensi G20 2022. Jadi bagian dari momentum penting perekonomian global. Indonesia saatnya pimpin pemulihan dunia.
At the end of 2021, we've paved the road to 2022's G20 presidency, promoting Recover Together, Recover Stronger as its main theme. The first Finance and Central Bank Deputies meeting in the Indonesian presidency has established 6 priority agendas in the finance track that will be discussed throughout 2022. Now, it's time to get the wheels turning. One of the most crucial agenda in the Indonesian presidency is exit strategy to support recovery. COVID-19 has led to a severe global recession. In response, countries have taken unprecedented fiscal and monetary policies to protect the economy. These policies, along with the distribution of COVID-19 vaccines, has brought positive outcomes. Economic activities had begun to resume. Nevertheless, recovery doesn't come as a one-size-fits-all item. Advanced economies are recovering much faster than their emerging markets counterpart, while low-income countries are lagging.
Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Ladies and gentlemen, a very good morning from Nusa Dua, Bali. Welcome to Bank Indonesia Annual Investment Forum 2022. My name is Indah, and this is my colleague Made Arta, and we will be the hosts for today's event.
We hope everyone is in a good health today. This is the first time we gather here in a hybrid format after doing the event virtually last year. And for your information, all crews and participants joining from Nusa Dua, Bali have been tested negative for COVID-19. We have yet to return to normal life, but the world is indeed slowly getting back on its feet. Before we begin, let us spare a moment of silence to wish for the success of this event and take this as a moment to wish everyone well in this unprecedented time. The moment of silence begin. Thank you.
We would also like to extend a warm welcome to the Honorable Mr. Peri Warjio, Governor of Bank Indonesia.
Mr. Dodi Budiwaluyo, Deputy Governor of Bank Indonesia.
Mr. Doni P. Juwono, Deputy Governor of Bank Indonesia.
Mr. Yuda Agung, Deputy Governor of Bank Indonesia.
Mrs. Aida S. Budiman, Deputy Governor of Bank Indonesia.
Assistant Governor and Head of Departments of Bank Indonesia.
Mr. Rudi Huta Barat, Head of Reserve Management Department. And last but not least, a very good morning and a very warm welcome to all distinguished guests and participants.
Ladies and gentlemen, as you may know, Bank Indonesia holds the annual investment forum every year. What's special about this year's annual investment forum is that it is also one of the side events of the G20 Summit 2022, of which Indonesia will be the chair. To know more about G20, we would like to invite you to enjoy the video we have prepared for you on G20.
At the end of 2021, we've paved the road to 2022's G20 presidency, promoting Recover Together, Recover Stronger as its main theme. The first Finance and Central Bank Deputies meeting in the Indonesian presidency has established 6 priority agendas in the finance track that will be discussed throughout 2022. Now, it's time to get the wheels turning. One of the most crucial agenda in the Indonesian presidency is exit strategy to support recovery. COVID-19 has led to a severe global recession. In response, countries have taken unprecedented fiscal and monetary policies to protect the economy. These policies, along with the distribution of COVID-19 vaccines, has brought positive outcomes. Economic activities had begun to resume. Nevertheless, recovery doesn't come as a one-size-fits-all item. Advanced economies are recovering much faster than their emerging markets counterpart, while low-income countries are lagging. The different timings of exit policies can potentially bring negative spillover effect for countries. To mitigate these risks, a well-planned, well-calibrated, and well-communicated exit strategy is needed. Under Indonesia's presidency, the G20 countries and invitees will work together to create policy settings for a smooth exit strategy. Discussions will be held in the working group level as well as high-level meetings. For it is our duty to ensure that emerging from this pandemic, no one gets left behind. Recover together, recover stronger.
And now, the Bank Indonesia Annual Investment Forum 2022 is going to start with a very special session. This session is called Leaders Inside, which will have two very prominent speakers, Mr. Peri Warjio, Governor of Bank Indonesia, and Mr. Emmanuel Roman, the CEO of PIMCO. This session will be moderated by Ms. Haslinda Amin, Bloomberg Chief International Correspondent for Southeast Asia. Haslinda Amin is the Chief International Correspondent for Southeast Asia and anchor for Bloomberg Television. She is also a host and an executive producer of the talk show High Flyers, which is the longest-running program on Bloomberg TV. Ms. Amin has also helmed Bloomberg's coverage of the Asia-Pacific Economic Cooperation Meeting, the World Economic Forum, the Asian Infrastructure Investment Bank Boards of Governors Meeting, and the ASEAN Milk and Global Summit.
She also serves on the board of the UN Women Singapore and has been nominated numerous times for Best Current Affairs Anchor at the Asian TV Awards. She graduated from the National University of Singapore, majoring in political science and English language. So without any further ado, please welcome Ms. Haslinda Amin.
Good morning. It's such a pleasure to be here today. What a day to be having this session with a much anticipated Fed meeting, market turbulence, and the lead up to it also overnight. And of course, add to that, the IMF downgraded its outlook for the world. So much to mull over. Now, however you look at it, 2022 is set to be the year of normalization as inflation continues to be a key risk for central banks around the world. We heard from Powell saying the risk is to the upside. As markets look for a level of stabilization, there are still reasons to think the fallout from normalization on Asian economies may be contained. Many are in a better position to manage the stress. They've built up FX reserves over the past decade. Many have learned from the crisis, their fundamentals stronger than before. The risks notwithstanding, including capital flight. So I'm really excited to get insights from our distinguished speakers this morning. Bapak Peri Warjio, Governor of Bank Indonesia, who's expertly navigated the challenges in Indonesia. Also, Manny Roman, CEO of PIMCO, which manages about $2.2 trillion in assets, known, of course, for its bond investments. First off, let me invite Governor Warjio for his address. Governor.
Thank you, Haslinda, for the kind word of introduction. My dear friend, Emmanuel Roman, all of the speakers as well as Board of Governors of Bank Indonesia participants. Good morning. Good morning and welcome to the Annual Investment Forum 2022. This is the commitment of Bank Indonesia. Every year, we hold this highly regarded international event of annual investment forum, one of the kind, with not only myself, but also leaders in the financial communities. And today, we also have alongside the G20 meeting for throughout 2022. About 2 years, we already living in pandemic. We have been surviving, fighting, now emerging from the COVID for economic recovery globally as well as in Indonesia. Yes, there is a challenge ahead, but we have to be optimistic. There is always opportunity, a lot of opportunity. And that's the opportunity that we are seeking for nurturing the economic, for servicing the people, but of course, for our interest on the foreign exchange reserve management. So in my talk today, let me just outline the following 3 points. First, how myself and we at Indonesia overseeing and outlooking on this year economic prospect globally and domestically. Secondly, how Indonesia coordinating our policy, especially the central bank, in navigating this economic recovery to also continue, notwithstanding the global uncertainty that are unfolding. The third, I will talk about what the agenda on the G20 that Indonesia will also contribute internationally on how best we coordinate our policy and nurturing the economic growth. Let me talk the first. We at Bank Indonesia, of course, looking at the global economic outlook this year. Continue recovery, but of course, there are some risks that we have to look into. We are looking at global economic growth this year toward more balance, not only being supported by US and China, but we are seeing some emergence of recovery in Europe, Japan, and India. With it, of course, there is increasing global trade volume and commodity prices. But of course, there are risks down the road. There is spreading of COVID-19. There is also global supply chain disruption. Notwithstanding also some geopolitical risks that we are all need to take into account. In the financial market, of course, every week, every month, we are assessing how the Fed will normalize its monetary policy. Of course, we are seeing there are large probability that Fed fund rate will be increasing. At Bank Indonesia, our baseline scenario using 4-time Fed fund rate increase this year, starting in March, but continuing also the following years. For emerging countries like Indonesia, this is also a challenge. How we need to strengthen our external stability to withstand the global spillover. But of course, I will outline later on Indonesia experience and how we need to navigate our economy. And now, let me talk about our confidence of Indonesia economic outlook this year. We are toward economic recovery. We are forecasting our economic growth 4.7 to 5.5%, being supported by more broad-based sources of growth. Not only continuing strong export performance with our commodity-based sector, but also continuing our investment from our reform to attract more foreign direct investment to support our infrastructure, our downstreaming of national resource, as well as our green economy and green finance. Consumption will be increasing with, of course, the acceleration of the vaccination and opening some sector. Inflation will be increased, but we are confident that inflation this year still within our target 3% plus minus 1%. Current account deficit a bit increasing, but still relatively low in Indonesia, minus 1.1 to 1.9%, still supporting our external stability. Foreign exchange reserve quite large in Indonesia, and that's the where we have to support our external stability. And intermediation, bank lending will be increasing, and beyond that, digitalization, flourishing in Asia, accelerating at the faster pace thanks to our support of digitalization of the payment system. So, in conclusion, and our first part, in my talk, yes, there is some risk down the road, but this is life. Life is full of risk, full of uncertainty. There is challenge that we have to address, to anticipate for our response to nurture our economic growth, to serve our people, but of course, provide opportunity for business, including in the financial system. Second part, how Indonesia navigating our economic recovery. This is unprecedented challenge over the past 2 years, but the spirit and the power of we in Indonesia is very strong. We always coordinate our policy very strong, from President, from my dear friend, Minister of Finance, from myself, all of the party get together to address the problem and to navigate the economic recovery. Vaccination rollout continue to be accelerated. Opening sector are unfolding. But beyond that, also reform. Fiscal and monetary policy coordination continue providing stimulus, but of course, starting to also planning for normalization, financial market deepening, digitalization. I think those, the spirit of we, the power of we in Indonesia for policy coordination, which is the spirit to get together we can. Let me just outline how Bank Indonesia will navigating our economic recovery in the back of unfolding global uncertainty. Bank Indonesia have 5 instruments in our central bank policy mix: monetary policy, macroprudential policy, payment system, financial market deepening, and of course, inclusion and green economy. This is the 5 policy. For the past 2 years of this 5 policy, all of them are for pro-growth. But this year, with unfolding global uncertainty, we will direct and already directing our monetary policy for pro-stability, while the other 4 policy continue to be for pro-growth. Let me just outline briefly how monetary policy strengthening our external stability. With, of course, 3 instruments: interest rate policy, liquidity management, and external exchange rate policy. For withstanding the global spillover, we rely more on how we need to ensure yield differential, not policy rate differential. Yield differential to be more flexible. We are seeing, of course, the increase of US Treasury, maybe toward 2%, 2.2% or even 2.5% end of this year. With that, of course, we need to be more flexible in our government bond yield to ensure the yield differential to be more attractive, continue attractive for foreign investment. With, of course, the flexibility of the exchange rate. We will continue to stabilize exchange rate, but to be more flexible in, of course, conjunction with the global unfolding yield in US Treasury and exchange rate. So, for mitigating the global spillover, we'll rely more on how ensuring yield differential cover and cover to be more flexible toward what unfolding in the global market. With that, in monetary policy, we can be more directed our interest rate and liquidity to be more serving our inflation vis-a-vis growth nexus. We already starting toward normalization of our liquidity. Our liquidity, the banking is very large. Over the past years, Bank Indonesia injecting so much liquidity in the banking. Liquid asset of a third party now is about 36%. And we starting to reduce those very large excess liquidity with increasing our reserve requirement to the bank before pre-COVID from 3% to 6.5%. And I already announcing starting 150 basis point in March, 100 basis point in June, and 50 basis point in September. So business banking can understand and can plan how to address their liquidity needs. But we will ensure that liquidity in the banking is more than enough for the bank to continue extend lending and purchasing government bond. With it, liquid asset will be declining toward 30%, but still much larger than pre-COVID level, which is at the maximum 21%. Interest rate will continue to be low, 3.5% until the early sign of the inflation, which is probably at the end of this year. This is the monetary policy that we will do for more pro-stability, relying more on the yield differential, cover and cover, to mitigating global spillover and start normalizing our excess liquidity and continue also holding interest rate, policy rate to be low until the early sign of inflation. So that monetary policy. How about macro-prudential policy? We will continue to be accommodative, supporting and addressing the financing for corporate. We continue relaxing our macro-prudential, not only continuing our loan-to-value ratio, macro-prudential intermediate ratio, but also giving some incentive to bank to extend for priority sector, 38 sector that will continue to on the path of recovery, giving some incentive in the form of reserve requirement reduction and other incentive. This is macro-prudential. Continue supporting pro-growth policy. Digitalization is continue. We already advancing and our digitalization of payment system. QR Indonesian standard now already continuing to be cross-border and also serving the need. Additional 15 million user will be adding for digitalization of our economic finance. We will continue the fast payment, BE fast payment, the retail 24/7, very low cost, continue serving the integration of the digital economy and finance. We will continue also integrating interoperability our payment and money market infrastructure. Money market deepening continue. We are in the process of establishing central counterparty. We'll be serving the repo with underlying of government bond, providing liquidity and also more efficient and low of course, liquidity cost on that aspect. And this is also serving for more opportunity to invest in the portfolio investment in Indonesia. And also additional of electronic trading platform for multi-matching in our money market. So we continue deepening our money market as well as financial market. Inclusion, green economy, green finance continue to be developing. SME and retail market, the backbone of Indonesian economy through digitalization, through corporatization, through also another deepening and development of inclusion, and as well as also developing the green economy and green finance. So that's the second part of my talk. It is a spirit of policy coordination, the spirit of the power of we continue to be strong. That's what I'm proud. What we are proud, it is to be better nurturing our economic outlook, economic prospect, but still be able to withstand the global spillover from the government as well as in our navigating from the central bank through our central bank policy mix. Let me just talk briefly on the G20. The video already explained clearly. We aiming in our presidency of G20, not only success of the meeting, but also success in showcasing of our economic growth, of our reform, and as well as of our inclusiveness, as well as also green economy. On the finance track, Minister of Finance and myself will sharing of the G20. 6 agenda that we put on the table. First, how can we better coordinating in our normalization of policy, be it fiscal, be it monetary, be it financial reform. How we have to calibrate, well plan, and well communicate of normalization of those policy to serve global economic growth better, but same time mitigating the unfolding risk that may be happen. Addressing the scarring effect of the corporate, the second agenda, to reform. Some forbearance needed in the short term, but the longer term will continue to be based on the reform and the real sector reform, labor reform, infrastructure, of course, including also downstreaming of our natural resource, but also serving also global, more fundamental, stronger global economic growth footing. That agenda is digitalization of the payment system, cross-border cooperation of the payment system. How can we better, more introducing more efficient, faster, and also safe payment system cross-border, not only on the QR standard, not only on standards open API, but also in number of cross-border cooperation for fast payment and other form to better serve addressing and navigating our economy in the digital world, including also addressing the emerging risk of the digitalization, including how we prepare central bank digital currency. The fourth agenda is, of course, inclusive economic and finance. Financial inclusion is, of course, the agenda. This is serving the agenda for many emerging markets, which is need to continue addressing and developing the financial and economic inclusion to serve better for the economy. The fifth agenda is on the green economy and finance. How can we better prepare the transition period, but at the same time, of course, introducing some new model business for green economy and finance. The sixth agenda on the finance track is international taxation cooperation, which is already progressing quite well. Those the 6 main agenda the priority agenda for G20 in Indonesia Presidency 2022. We will continue once again to be successful in G20 coordination globally for better global economic growth and advanced and emerging economy. But beyond that, we invite you to also making the G20 success. In February, we will also organizing the side meeting event, many events for our financial community as well as business community for also getting together for showcasing and engaging in the business. Also in April, alongside with spring meeting, but of course in July. July Ministerial Governor meeting will also be one of the big event for the meeting as well as for the private sector together prior to October meeting and leaders summit in November. With that, I invite you, all of you, to be joining this G20 meeting for successful. With that, let's be optimistic of 2022. There is some race down the road, but of course, we need to address those challenges to continue nurturing, navigating global economic recovery. Indonesia, this is the spirit, and we are optimistic our economy continue to be on the path of economic recovery. And of course, this is also the spirit that we will bring about G20. Thank you very much.
Governor Warjio, thank you so much for that. Promising interest rates will remain low until inflation picks up, also promising liquidity. Now, for a market perspective, I'd like to invite Manny Roman, CEO of PIMCO. Manny, hello.
Hi, how are you?
Manny, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much. Your Excellency, thank you very much for having me. It's an opportunity to talk about what we are seeing in the US, what our views are, and possible path to economic recovery here. The current topic is, of course, what the Fed is going to do in light of real inflation. And I'm dating myself, but the last time I saw inflation was growing up in Europe in the late 70s and 80s. And it really should not surprise us. The government has injected an enormous amount of fiscal stimulus in the US economy, and inflation is running hot. You can see this in bottom-up data from company. You can also see this when you look at the CPI number. And maybe it is helpful to break inflation into two parts, one which is pure monetary inflation, and one which is due to the bottleneck in the supply of goods from Asia to the US. And I think we can all realize that the Fed will raise rate. I agree with His Excellency. Our base case is that the Fed will raise 4 times this year. But when it comes to the supply chain and how fast we will get to a better position, it's very hard to predict. And of course, financial conditions matter. Of course, the labor market in the US is very tight. And there's many things we don't know. This is monetary experiment in a world we really have not seen since the Volcker days in the US. And so we will need to negotiate this, and we will need to think about where we go from here. Our view is that the long end of the curve, the 10-year rate, will not move much higher simply because there are real historical trend in terms of the demography and what we call R-star in terms of anchoring long-term rate. I would also like to add that in this framework, emerging markets should go and should do well. There is a super secular trend based on demography, based on growth, based on outsourcing, which should be very good for Asia, and Indonesia is certainly one of the main beneficiaries over the long run, and we're actually bullish in terms of economic prospect. There are question marks. One is in Ukraine, where you have a complicated situation where we may have a war. It may be a small war, which is the most likely scenario. It may be a larger war. But of course, that would have dramatic impact in terms of energy. This is, of course, something which would produce more inflation and something that at PIMCO we are incredibly focused on. And obviously, the next 6 weeks will be quite interesting. The Fed will taper. The balance sheet of the Fed will be smaller rather than larger. This is a playbook which has been done before. Our friend Ben Bernanke, who's chair of Global Advisory Board, is the expert in the matter. I don't think you'll see much surprise. What it means also is one of the trends that you see is technology and what it does into the world. And being based in California, I would be remiss not to tell you that what His Excellency was talking about, payment and the evolution of payment, is an incredible opportunity and a threat. What will be the bank of the future? What will be the payment company of the future? What will be the credit card company of the future? What will blockchain do to our own ecosystem? What does it mean to money management? What it means in the short term is the single most important thing I can do is to invest heavily in technology, both in terms of my CapEx and in terms of finding opportunity outside the firm to seed new idea, take some risk, and see what works and what doesn't. And I think this need to invest in technology and to significantly increase CapEx will have as a consequence for the money management industry that the large will become larger and the smaller player won't be able to face or to foot the bill to be able to be competitive. It's what we call the age of transformation, but it's really important. We incredibly focus on our transaction cost and on trying to generate alpha. And the reality is we need to hire the best people, but we also need to have the best technology and the best quantitative technique. And it is something that is relentless, where we need to invest every single day, and that hopefully over the cycle will benefit from where we are. I also like to say that the last 2 years have been draining. COVID has been at first scary. The month of March 2020 was the most difficult in terms of financial condition and in terms of market that I had seen since the great financial crisis. The recovery of the credit market and the equity market was swift, and in retrospect, not surprising given the amount of money being injected. But we are cautious. We think that there may be more surprise forward, and that portfolio needs to remain liquid because there are things that we don't know. We don't know whether the next variation of COVID will be like Omicron and benign, or whether it will be worse. The various experts we have have no certainty. And when one has no certainty, it is a good thing to be humble. What I do hope is that COVID makes us realize how important it is to have a global view on the humankind, how it is important to solve problems together, how rich countries have a moral obligation to give to poorer country, and the plea of the people who have nothing and who need plenty of help. And I think this has been a theme in terms of our ESG focus. There's, of course, the energy transition and how we're going to go to a green economy. We will predict that it will be complicated and bumpy, so to speak. Hydrogen and solar energy will take time to take foot and to be able to replace shale gases. But ultimately, within 25 or 30 years, we should get to a good outcome. There's still 5 million kids dying of hunger in the world. There are many inequality. We think it is the S of ESG. It's both a financial and a political problem, something that collectively and as part of the G20, we can aspire to try to help. With that, I will stop here. I thank you once again for having PIMCO and having me, and I'm very proud to be part of this conversation. Thank you.
Manny, thank you so much for that. We have a couple of minutes for a Q&A. And we have a couple of minutes for the Q&A. And I want to pose the first question to Manny, since you've just talked about yields. Yields have been surging, yet you say that you don't expect yields to move much higher from here. Why not? What assumptions are you making, especially on the back of you saying that there's so much uncertainty still?
Well, I think there's various things. I think the long end of the curve is the collection of forward prices and term premium. And then also you have to think of what's the right long-term rate of inflation and what's the long-term rate of growth. And unless you are incredibly bullish about future growth in the US for the years to come, you get to a fairly small number. My friend Joachim Fels, who was speaking at the same forum last year, will give a very articulate reason why this number should be around 0.5%. And then as such, given inflation expectation, you can reconstruct a curve and get to a number which is not that different from the one we are at. Now, the market dictates what the long end of the curve is. The market is always right. I say this with a broken crystal ball and an unbelievable amount of humility, but I can certainly tell you that I would be incredibly surprised if we see a 3% 10-year rate for the rest of my career.
Wow, that's quite a statement. Pak Warjio, Bank Indonesia has said its monetary policy may not have to move in tandem with the Fed. The base case is 4 right now, but some already saying it could be 5, it could be 6. How long can BI stay divergent from the Fed?
Well, let me, Selina, let me just say it clearly. We will adjusting our yield differential. If you take interest rate, there is 2 kinds of interest rate in the financial market. One is yield of government bond. The second is policy rate. So these 2 may not be, and Indonesia is not the same. For adjusting and normalization of the Fed US Treasury, we will be making the adjustment on the yield differential, cover and uncover. While the policy rate still be directed domestically. Why we can do that? Because the liquidity is very, very large. Normalization of our monetary policy starting with normalization of the liquidity. I think this the plan that we already communicating to the public.
How about the rupiah, Governor Warjio? We've seen quite a stable currency versus a strong dollar. How confident are you about maintaining a stable currency amid this global tightening? There's always the risk of capital flight, especially from EMs like Indonesia?
Exchange rate will be determined by fundamental and the short term. Our fundamental is very strong. The inflation still continue low. Current account deficit continue to be low. Economic growth rising. Yield differential is still attractive. At the same time, of course, US dollar strength is also declining. I think those actually one of the positive and of course the risk going forward. But as I said, we need to dance with the market. We need to dance with the global. I think that's what the basic. What I keep repeating, making our yield differential cover and uncover to be dancing with the globe, including the development of US Treasury, including the continued strength of the dollar, or even probably declining strength of the dollar, so to speak.
I like the idea of dancing with the market. Manny, we talk about how inflation is running hot. And they say when inflation is running hot in an environment like that, you don't put your money in cash, you don't put your money in bonds. Your take on that?
Well, I think it's a question of what you do with your money, and it's not simple. I think you try to navigate not for the next 6 months, but for the next 10 years. And I do think that one can construct portfolio which incorporates inflation premium. Maybe you have more tips, maybe you have more emerging market, maybe you have more emerging market. Just to echo what His Excellency was saying, we do like the rupee, for example, and there's other emerging market currency that we like. Now, should you own high yield at this level of spread? Probably not. But you can look at the tape, and when you go back to your office, you will see what the stock market look like. It's down 10% on the year. So I do like my bond returns all of a sudden.
Flattening of the curve. What does it tell you about the outlook for the economy?
Yeah, I think it tells you we have the same textbook, His Excellency and I, that it tells you that a very flat yield curve, if it inverts, the US is going to slow down quite a bit.
One more question before we have to let both of you go. Governor, the biggest risk for all your projections this year?
My apology.
What is the biggest risk you see for all your projections for the year?
Of course, the global uncertainty and the geopolitical, as well as additional for the normalization. I think there is a risk, but I think we can anticipate better. But the geopolitical, and as Manuel mentioned about the pandemic, nobody knows how to predict the pandemic. But once again, Haslinda, life is full of challenge. That's making our life beautiful, and taking the risk as well as calculating the risk and make profit. I think that's what Manuel, teach me how to make money in this very unprecedented global uncertainty. Thank you, Haslinda.
Always glass half full. Manny, thank you so much for your time. Been a pleasure having you. And I'd like to invite the governor for his closing remarks. Governor, please.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much for this event, annual investment forum. This is one of the big event. Enjoy the forum. Thank you, Emmanuel, for always having a good faith and confidence for Indonesia, and as well as for you, Haslinda. Don't forget, this is the beginning, and we will continue also in the G20 event. Let's get together, making 2022 better opportunity. Thank you very much.